The first thing that hit me was the smell. Not home, stale takeout and cheap cologne. My sea bag thumped onto the curb as the taxi pulled away, exhaust hanging in the cold air. The condo windows were lit, curtains half closed. My condo, the one I'd signed for in dress blues and VA paperwork, hands still smelling like CLP and adrenaline. The front door swung open before I could reach the steps. My father leaned against the frame like he owned the place, one hand on the jamb, the other wrapped around a coffee mug he definitely hadn't bought. "You're late," he said. "And homeless now, by the way." Cold wind slid under my collar. Dust from Kabul was still ground into my boots. "What?" I asked. Chad appeared behind him, bare feet on my hardwood, one of my old college hoodies hanging off his shoulders. There was a smear of something bright orange on the sleeve, Cheeto dust, right where my unit patch used to ride. He grinned like this was some sitcom. "Surprise, sis," he said. "We got upgraded." He stepped aside just enough for me to see past them. My couch, my secondhand, carefully reupholstered couch, was buried under toys and snack wrappers. My framed photos, the ones I'd hung in a neat grid before deploying, were piled crooked in a laundry basket by the hall closet. A stroller blocked the path to my bedroom. There was a new TV I hadn't bought sitting where my bookshelf used to be. My bookshelf itself was gone. "What is this?" My voice came out flatter than I felt. "Training. Always training. Keep your tone level, even when everything spikes." My father took a sip of coffee, watching me over the rim. "This," he gestured behind him, "is what happens when the person who actually stayed close needs help, and the person who ran off to play soldier leaves an empty condo sitting here bleeding money." "I was in Kabul," I said. He shrugged. "You weren't using it." The words slid icy and sharp along my spine. Chad scratched his neck, eyes bouncing from my sea bag to my boots to my face. "Look, Maria, don't be dramatic," he said. "It's not like we're stealing. Dad's got it handled. There's a buyer lined up, and we'll cut you in once things stabilize." I stared at him. "A buyer," I repeated. He nodded, smiling like he'd just told me the weather. "Market's hot," he said. "You should be thanking us, honestly. We're saving you from being upside down." My hand tightened on the strap of my sea bag until the canvas bit into my glove. "Move," I said quietly. Chad laughed. "This isn't a checkpoint, Sarge," he said. "Relax." My father's voice dropped into the tone I'd grown up with. Lazy, heavy, the one that always meant the conversation was already over in his head. "We changed the locks," he said. "Power of attorney, remember? You signed it. You trusted me to make decisions while you were off wherever. I made one. You're not coming in." And a phantom of sand scratched at the back of my throat. For a half second, the hallway blurred into gray concrete and humming generators. The Kabul TOC, not my building. Emails scrolling. That line on the county portal, pending access authorization. Secondary party. It hadn't been a glitch. My father smirked at my silence. "You'll land on your feet," he said. "You always do. That's your thing. Golden girl, strong one. You can couch surf a bit. Save up for something new. Chad doesn't have your options." I looked at my brother. He didn't look ashamed. He looked relieved. "So," my father continued, "you can leave the sea bag here if you want. We'll find a corner for it until you get set up, or drag it back to whatever motel you find. Up to you." He was waiting for it, the explosion, the frantic begging daughter, the plea to just talk this out, the version of me they thought they still had. Instead, I let my hand relax. I slipped the strap higher on my shoulder. "Nah," I said. "I'll keep it." I stepped back off the porch. "Where are you going?" Chad called. "Away from this," I said. My father snorted. "Don't be childish," he said. "You can't fight paperwork, Maria. It's already in motion. Bennett family signs next week. Nice folks. They'll actually use the place." I paused at the sidewalk, breath puffing in small white clouds, and turned just enough to look at him over my shoulder. "Yeah," I said. "Paperwork's a funny thing." His eyes narrowed. "What's that supposed to mean?" I didn't answer. I walked toward the street, boots crunching over old rock salt, my sea bag bumping against my hip in a familiar rhythm. I could feel their stares burning into my back. I could hear a kid crying inside. One of Chad's girls, probably. The door finally closed behind me with a soft final click. Under the street lamp, I stopped, dug my phone out of my pocket, and opened the folder I'd created in Kabul. Screenshots, emails, county records, limited POA scan. Jag's notes. The glow lit my gloves, my orders, my breathing. In Kabul, I'd learned to listen when my gut said this is wrong. I'd had months in the dust to think about what I'd signed, what it did and didn't give them, what it meant when a routine email used the phrase secondary party next to my address. They thought they were ambushing me. They had no idea I'd already been building a case half a world away. A motel sign flickered 2 blocks down, buzzing neon in the winter dark. I turned toward it, phone still open in my hand, my grandmother's old words running through my head like cadence. Family will take as much as you let them. Make sure that line is yours, not theirs. The line had just been drawn. Next step was deciding how hard I'd enforce it, and how many receipts I was willing to drop to make sure this time the story didn't get rewritten without me. The motel room smelled like old cigarettes and lemon cleaner. I locked the door, set my sea bag against the wall, and sat on the edge of the bed with my boots still on. Springs creaked under my weight, protesting like everything else in my life had decided to. I stared at the faded floral bedspread until my breathing evened out. Then I opened my phone again. The Condo Ops folder glowed on the screen. Little rectangles of proof. I thumbed up to the top. Back to Kabul. Dust, humming generators, the slap of helos overhead. That had been my soundtrack when all of this started. I'd been in the TOC that night, boots on concrete, headset slightly too tight under my cover. Screens washed the room in ghost blue light as convoy icons crept along digital maps. Someone's stale coffee burned on the warmer. Sand coated everything, even the cables. I was logging movement when my personal email pinged. Subject: property contact change requested. My stomach did a small, hard drop. I clicked it open between location updates. Dear Maria Lawson, a request has been initiated to add a secondary contact for the following property. My property. It listed my condo address, my loan number. Requested by, authorized party on file. The date matched the day I'd left Conus. I'd stared at the screen long enough for Sergeant Hughes to nudge my shoulder. You good, Staff Sergeant? He'd asked. Yeah, I'd lied. Just spam. But it wasn't spam. I'd remembered the kitchen table then. Peeling laminate, my father's pen tapping a simple legal form. It's just limited, he'd said. Bills, emergencies. We're not getting any younger, kid. You'll be half a world away. Let me help. You trust me or not? I'd been packing gear, double-checking will and SGLI, thinking more about IEDs than escrow. I signed. He smiled, folded the paper, patted my shoulder like he'd done something generous for once. Back in Kabul, another email had landed a week later. County portal. Pending access authorization. Secondary party. I'd screenshotted. My thumbprint left a faint, greasy swipe on the glass. I scrolled down now, motel lamplight striping my knuckles, and saw the rest. The call log with my father where every concern I raised was routine, his voice echoing in that weird half-second delay across 6,000 miles. You're paranoid, Maria. This is why you shouldn't be reading this stuff over there. Just focus on your job. I've got things handled. Things. He meant my life. He'd always assumed it was an extension of his. Growing up, I'd been the one who didn't need handling. Chad cried. I figured it out. Chad crashed the car. Dad raided the savings. Chad failed a class. Mom called teachers, begged, bribed. If I came home with an A, Dad barely glanced at the report card. You'll be fine, he'd say. You always are. He meant it as praise. It felt like dismissal. When I told him I'd enlisted, he laughed. Marines? He said. You weigh what, 120 pounds dripping wet? That's cute. I'd shrugged, refused to rise. The contract was already signed. My ship date was on the fridge, magneted under the local BBQ menu. Boot camp will knock that chip off your shoulder, he'd added. Maybe teach you some respect. Turned out he was half right. Boot did knock things off me, just not the things he wanted. It stripped away the flinching. the habit of apologizing for existing, the reflex to believe the loudest person in the room was automatically right. In their place, it installed something better: procedure, chain of command, the knowledge that competence meant something, even if no one back home could see it. I made sergeant, then staff sergeant. Chad made a collection of unfinished degrees and a habit of calling dad whenever his checking account hit double digits. When I bought the condo after my second deployment, I did it quietly. No housewarming party, no balloons, just me, a VA loan, a folding table, and an air mattress on the floor. Dad had stood in the doorway on moving day, looking around with a strange calculation in his eyes. "Nice starter," he'd said. "Nothing fancy. You can always upgrade when you have a real family." I'd been sweaty and sore, my shoulders groaning under boxes. "This is a real family," I'd said, nodding toward the empty walls. "Me." He'd snorted and walked away. In Kabul, I couldn't walk away, but I could plan. The night after that pending access email, I'd gone to see Lieutenant Harper. He was JAG, light on jokes, heavy on precision. We'd shared enough bad chow and ugly briefings that he didn't blink when I knocked on his office door at 2300. "What's up, Staff Sergeant?" he'd asked, pushing paperwork aside. I'd closed the door, staying just inside the threshold. "Hypothetical," I'd said. His brow had lifted. "Those are usually the least hypothetical kind," he said. "Shoot." I'd laid it out in broad strokes. Limited power of attorney, condo back home, weird emails, dad with a history of treating my work as background noise and my property as extra storage. "Could somebody use a limited POA to add themselves to my deed?" I'd asked. "Or sell the place?" Harper had leaned back, hands laced over his stomach, eyes narrowing in thought. "Depends what you signed," he said. "But limited typically means exactly that, limited. Bills, emergencies, not real estate transfers. Abuse of POA is more common than you'd think, especially with deployed personnel. You pulled title yet?" "Not yet," I'd admitted. "Do it," he'd said. "County Recorder's Office usually has an online index. You'll need your parcel number, screenshot everything. If you see any recorded changes you didn't authorize, we go from hypothetical to my actual job." He'd held my gaze. "And Staff Sergeant," he'd added, "trust your gut. It didn't get you killed out there. Don't ignore it because the attack vector's paperwork instead of rockets." So I'd pulled title. Sitting in a plywood office under fluorescent buzz, I'd typed my parcel number into a Midwestern county website that looked like it hadn't been updated since dial-up. There it was, my deed, my VA lien, my address, and a line timestamped 2 weeks after I deployed. Notice of intent to add secondary party. Withdrawn, pending validation. I'd screenshotted. Twice, next to it, a little note. Insufficient authority documentation. Whoever was on the other side of the counter back home had looked at whatever my father gave them and decided it wasn't enough, for now. I'd sat back in the squeaky office chair, the Afghan night pressing cold against the tent walls, and felt the old hurt rise like smoke. He always did this, pushed as far as he could, stopped just short of something irreversible, or thought he did. I'd made a folder, labeled it Condo Ops, and started dropping everything in. Every email, every portal notification, the scan of the POA, my deed, the JAG notes I'd typed up after talking to Harper. I didn't confront Dad then. Out there, I needed my head in one place, convoys, routes, names. But the seed was planted. 2 weeks before redeploying, another text had landed from an unknown number. "Dad, call before you come home. No, we can't wait. No, when do you land? Nothing. Just control. Always control." In the tent, my squad was cracking jokes, packing duffels, arguing over which stateside fast food they'd hit first. My fingers hovered over the reply button. Then I locked the screen and tossed the phone onto my bunk. If they were planning something, they'd have to plan it blind. By the time our transport wheels left Afghan dirt, I'd accepted something ugly and clean. Whatever waited on that porch, I couldn't stop from here. But I could be ready to respond when I got there. Sapad. The motel heater rattled, throwing lukewarm air across my shins. I dragged my sea bag closer, pulled out a fresh notebook, and wrote the date at the top of the first page. Condo Ops, Phase 2. Underneath, I started listing attempted unauthorized access notation, county portal, timestamp, limited POA signed, date on scanned copy on file. A visual of occupancy change, Chad plus family plus dad present, upon return. On verbal admission by dad of pending sale and use of POA. Personal property displaced, damaged, to be documented later. Outside, a truck rumbled past on the wet street, tires hissing. I added one more line, the most important. Emotional response, controlled, no escalation at scene. Witnesses, none yet. The last part mattered. I'd seen enough messy family drama in civilian courts to know how quickly the story turned into angry vet snaps. I wasn't giving anyone that. My phone buzzed again. New text from Dad. Dad, you walking away doesn't change anything. Paperwork is done. You can't undo it. Be smart for once, my jaw clenched. For once. I set the phone down carefully, screen still lit. I could hear Harper's voice again, calm under the tent lights. You can't fight what you don't document. Okay, I murmured into the empty room. Let's fight. I grabbed my phone, opened a notes app, and copied the text into a fresh entry labeled harassment, post return. Then I scrolled past my father's message to an earlier one from a different contact. Lieutenant Harper. Right before we boarded the plane, he'd clapped my shoulder. Whatever's waiting at home, Basa, he'd said. Remember, law is just another battle space. The principles are the same: intelligence, preparation, timing. Don't go in guns hot when you can go in with a stack of forms they can't argue with. Now, in a motel that smelled like old lives and fresh bleach, I understood he'd given me more than legal advice. He'd given me rules of engagement. For once, my family had no idea I'd written them myself. Tomorrow would be Attorney Day. Title: VA Regs, Misuse of POA Statutes. Tonight, I let the heater rattle, set my boots beside the bed, and lay back on the scratchy coverlet with my hands folded over my stomach. My condo was full of other people's noise and bad decisions, but my records were clean. My instincts were awake, and for the first time since I'd signed that cursed POA at the kitchen table, I felt something other than helpless anger. I felt ready. Morning came in through thin curtains, pale and ugly. Traffic noise hissed past the motel. Tires on wet asphalt. A truck backfiring somewhere down the road. My whole body ached the way it only does after a redeployment and a family ambush on the same day. I showered in lukewarm water that smelled faintly of rust, pulled on clean jeans and a base layer shirt, then laid my documents out on the wobbly little round table like I was prepping a briefing. Passport, orders, VA loan printout I'd tucked into my sea bag, just in case. Phone, 63% battery. Good enough. I Googled the firm Harper had recommended before we left Afghanistan, Rosen and Feldman, small real estate shop not far from base, and dialed with my thumb. A calm receptionist answered. I gave her the short, sharp version. Limited POA, deployment, condo, family, possible unauthorized sale. We handle a lot of VA-backed cases, she said. Can you be here at 10? I'll be there at 9:50, I replied. Outside, the air bit my cheeks as I stepped into the gray morning. My boots felt heavier than they had on deployment, damp sidewalks replacing moon dust. I flagged a rideshare, climbed into a car that smelled like pine air freshener and yesterday's fries, and watched my city slide by. Familiar streets. Unfamiliar anger. Rosen and Feldman sat in a brick building squeezed between a laundromat and a payday loan place. Not glamorous, which actually made me trust it more. The glass door stuck a little when I pulled it, then gave way with a squeak. Inside, the lobby was quiet. Printer hum in the background, coffee machine burbling. The air smelled like toner and cheap roast. A middle-aged man with tired eyes and a tidy tie stepped out, file in hand. Staff Sergeant Lawson? He asked. Yes, sir, I said, standing. Feldman, he said, offering his hand. His grip was dry, firm, no theatrics. Come on back. We sat at a plain oak desk. He motioned to my stack of papers. Walk me through it, he said, from before Kabul to last night. So I did. I started with the kitchen table, the power of attorney, my father's pen tapping. I moved through Kabul emails, county records, Lieutenant Harper's warning. I finished with my father in my doorway, Chad on my couch, and the casual way they'd told me I was homeless now. Feldman listened without interrupting, glasses low on his nose, pen scratching occasionally on a legal pad. When I pulled up the county portal screenshots, he leaned in closer. "May I?" he asked. "Go ahead," I said, sliding the phone across the desk. He studied the notation. "Okay," he said slowly. "First, good instincts. Second, your dad ran into a county clerk who actually did their job." He flipped the phone back to me and tapped the entry. "This insufficient authority documentation note," he said. "That means he tried to use the POA to do something it doesn't allow, namely alter ownership or add himself as a party, and got stopped." "So he couldn't sell it?" I asked. "Not legally," Feldman said. "But he could mislead a buyer into thinking he could. And he definitely can't move your brother's family in and claim it's just managing the property. That's beyond the scope." He slid the POA copy toward him, skimmed it, nodded. "Limited," he said. "Utilities, basic bills. Nothing about conveyances, nothing about encumbrances, nothing about tenancy." He looked up. "Staff Sergeant, your father's in deep water," he said. "If he's signed anything representing himself as having authority to sell, that's fraudulent misrepresentation at best. And if he's damaged your property or interfered with your use, that's another layer." A breath I didn't know I'd been holding slipped out. "Okay," I said. "So what do we do?" "We stop anything from happening," he said. "You already did the right thing by not losing your temper last night. No altercations means your credibility stays clean. Next step, we put the world on notice that you do not consent to any transfer and that any contract your father signed is void because he lacked authority." Son, he started a checklist. "Title company, county recorder, HOA, lender," he said. "We send certified letters today, and we loop in law enforcement sooner rather than later so your father doesn't get to frame this as a misunderstanding if it becomes criminal." The word criminal felt both satisfying and sad. "I don't want him in jail," I said quietly. I just want my home back." "I understand," Feldman said. "But you need leverage. The possibility of charges provides that. We don't choose whether the state pursues them, but we do decide how thorough our documentation is." He pushed a new form toward me. "Fill this out," he said. "I'm going to step out and get my paralegal started on the notices." His footsteps faded down the hall. The fluorescent hum overhead seemed louder in his absence, a thin, constant buzz. I filled in my information with steady strokes: name, DOB, address that was and would be mine again. Under brief description of issue, I wrote, "Limited POA given to father pre-deployment. Evidence he exceeded authority, attempted unauthorized sale of VA-backed condo, moved brother plus family in without consent." My handwriting looked like it always did. Blocky, controlled, a little too precise. Like I'd memorized how to fit inside lines long before the Marine Corps ever handed me a rifle. Feldman returned a few minutes later, a new folder already labeled with my name. "We'll get the letters out today," he said. "In the meantime, I want you to go to the sheriff's office." I frowned. "Now?" I asked. "Now," he said. "We're not filing a full-on criminal complaint yet. But we are getting a statement on record that you did not authorize this. That way, if your father tries to report you for trespassing or causing a disturbance when you reclaim your own condo, there's a paper trail the deputies can see." At the idea of walking into a law enforcement building made my shoulders tighten. Years of knowing you can do everything right and still be treated like a problem. But this was home, not a war zone. "Okay," I said. "Sheriff's it is." He stood, walked me to the door. "And Staff Sergeant?" he added. "Yes, sir." "You're not overreacting," he said. "What they did? It's not family drama, it's abuse of trust. Treat it like you would any mission. Plan, execute, document." That, at least, was familiar ground. The sheriff's department lobby was all hard surfaces and echo, phones ringing in the distance, the clack of keys, the low murmur of voices behind frosted glass. A radio crackled somewhere near the back, bursts of static breaking through. The air smelled like disinfectant and coffee. A deputy at the front window glanced up as I approached. Can I help you, ma'am? She asked. Yes, I said, straightening a little. Staff Sergeant Maria Lawson, U.S. Marine Corps. I'd like to make a statement regarding potential misuse of power of attorney and attempted fraud involving my residence. Her eyebrows went up a notch. Okay, she said. Have a seat. I'll get the lieutenant. I sat on a plastic chair that was somehow both cold and sticky. My knee bounced once before I told it to stop. A door clicked open and a tall man with silver at his temples stepped out, badge clipped to his belt. Staff Sergeant Lawson? He asked. Yes, sir, I said, standing. Lieutenant Donahue? He said, offering his hand. Let's talk. His office was small, papers stacked in careful piles, a framed photo of a Little League team crooked on the wall. The blinds were half closed, slats casting thin lines of light over his desk. He motioned for me to sit, then flipped open a notebook. Start at the beginning, he said, and take your time. So I did again. Power of attorney, Kabul emails, county notices, my father at the door, my brother on the couch, Feldman's interpretation, the buyers I hadn't met yet. I slid my phone across the desk, scrolling to each screenshot, each text. Donahue studied them, lips pressed into a straight line. Okay, he said when I finished. Here's what I see. You gave your father limited authority for specific tasks. He appears to have exceeded that by representing himself as able to sell your property and installing unauthorized occupants. That's potential fraud and possibly theft of use. Whether a prosecutor wants to take it that far, I can't say yet, but it's worth documenting. He clicked his pen. What do you want from us right now? He asked. I wanted on record that I did not authorize any sale or occupancy change, what I said. So if and when I reclaim my condo, no one mistakes me for the trespasser. He nodded. That's reasonable, he said. We can do a statement, attach your screenshots, and enter a note in our system tied to the address. If we're called out there, deputies will see it. It wasn't armor, but it was something like it. He took my statement himself, handwriting mostly legible, occasionally pausing to ask for a date or spelling. When he finished, he turned the page around. Read it, make sure it's accurate, then sign at the bottom if you're satisfied, he said. I read every line. Then I signed. As my pen lifted from the paper, some of the knot in my chest loosened. I wasn't just someone's daughter in a screaming match anymore. I was a Marine with a documented complaint and a law office at my back. Donahue tore off a yellow copy and handed it to me. Keep that, he said. And if they contact you, save every message. Don't engage in anything heated. Let the paper do the talking. The paper. I tucked the statement into my folder, feeling its weight. Outside, the afternoon had sagged into that flat, colorless gray. December does so well. My breath puffed in quick clouds as I walked back toward the motel, folder under my arm like a shield. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. I answered anyway. Maria Lawson, I said. Hi, Ms. Lawson? A woman's voice, cautious, a little shaky. This is Emily Bennett. My husband and I, we're supposed to close on your condo next week. My steps slowed. I see, I said. She hesitated. We just came from our attorney. He says there's a problem, that your father didn't have the right to sell, that the sale might be void. Is that true? Yes, I said simply. Silence crackled for a beat. We had no idea, she said, voice tight. We thought, he said, you'd given permission, that you were abroad, that you didn't care about the place. I swallowed anger that wasn't aimed at her. I care, I said. A lot. I'm so sorry, she said. We've already given notice on our rental. We have kids. I don't know what we're going to do. I stopped at the curb, watched a bus hiss to a stop on the corner, people shuffling off into the cold. I'm not your enemy, I said. Your agent should have done better. My father should have told the truth. I'm working with my lawyer to fix this, no matter what. I won't lie to you. She exhaled, a shaky sound. Our attorney suggested a meeting, she said, with you, your family, and a deputy present. At the condo to figure out next steps. A meeting. My father, my brother, the people they'd misled, and law enforcement, all on the lawn of the place they thought they owned. Tell your attorney to coordinate with Rosen and Feldman and the sheriff's office, I said. If they're in, I'll be there. Thank you, she said quietly. We hung up. For a moment, I stood there, feeling the cold seep through my jeans, the folder digging into my palm. The battlefield had just moved from paper to pavement. They'd wanted me to come home desperate, fumbling, grateful for whatever scraps they offered. Instead, there would be a deputy, 2 sets of lawyers, and a buyer furious at being lied to. I pictured the condo lawn, winter brown grass under my boots, my father's face when he realized the ambush had turned into an inspection. The thought didn't make me smile. It made me steady. Let them think they held all the cards. By the time we met at that front door, the stack in my hands would tell a different story. The day of the meeting, the sky looked like wet concrete. I stood across the street from my own building, folder under my arm, sea bag at my feet like always. The condo's brick face sat there, bland and ordinary, as if it hadn't been turned into a battleground without my consent. A county cruiser rolled up first, tires crackling over salt and grit. Deputy Harris stepped out, collar up against the cold, notebook tucked into his vest. He gave me a small nod. "Staff Sergeant," he said. "Deputy," I replied. He checked his watch. "Bennett's are on their way," he said. "Your father and brother were notified." "Good," I said. "I want everyone hearing this at the same time." A compact SUV pulled in next, a car seat visible through the back glass. Emily climbed out, hugging her coat tight, and a man I assumed was Mark walked around to her side, hand hovering just behind her back. They both looked tired in the way that comes from weeks of not knowing where you'll sleep next month. "Ms. Lawson," Emily said. "Maria," I corrected gently. "You can call me Maria." She nodded, eyes darting to the deputy, to the building, back to me. "We're really sorry to meet like this," she said. "None of this is on you," I said. "You were lied to." A black sedan swung around the corner and pulled up fast, parking crooked. My father stepped out, jaw already set, coat flapping. Chad oozed out of the passenger side a beat later, shoulders hunched, hood up despite the cold. The sight of that car in front of my unit made my teeth ache. Dad clocked the cruiser first, then the Bennetts, then me. "What the hell is this?" he demanded, marching across the grass. "Why is there a cop here?" Deputy Harris moved slightly forward, not threatening, just present. "Sir," he said, "we're here to make sure everyone stays calm while we clarify an ownership issue." "This doesn't concern the county," my father snapped. "This is family business." "No, Mr. Lawson," Emily cut in softly, surprising me. "You made it our business when you signed a contract on property you didn't own." His head whipped toward her. "Watch your tone," he said. "You're talking to the man who tried to sell someone else's condo," I said, my voice cutting through his. He turned back to me, eyes narrowing. "I told you," he said, "the sale's already in motion. You can't just show up and cry to the cops because you don't like my decisions." Feldman's words echoed in my head. Law is another battle space. I slid the folder from under my arm and flipped it open. "Your decisions," I said, "aren't worth much without authority." I held up the first page, the limited POA, my signature boxed neatly at the bottom, the paragraph outlining exactly what he could and could not do. "This is what you have," I said. "Utilities, basic bills. Nothing about occupancy, nothing about adding your name to my deed, nothing about selling my home." I handed it to Deputy Harris. He skimmed it, then passed it to Emily's lawyer, who had arrived quietly and now stood behind the Bennetts, briefcase at his feet. My father's shoulders twitched. Paperwork, paperwork," he muttered. "You're really going to hide behind fine print instead of helping your brother?" "That fine print is the only reason you're not already in handcuffs," I said, keeping my tone level. "You stepped outside it. You told a young family you had the right to sell what you don't own." Chad spoke up for the first time, words tumbling out. "She's blowing this up," he said. "You were gone. The place was empty. We needed somewhere to live. You don't even like it here." He said it like I'd abandoned an old sweater, not a life. "I worked 3 jobs and did a full deployment to afford this empty place," I said. "I chose bare walls and an air mattress instead of asking anyone for help. You chose to move in and flip it while I was getting shot at overseas." Deputy Harris cleared his throat, drawing everyone's attention. For the record, he said, our office has a statement from Staff Sergeant Lawson, dated yesterday, that she did not authorize any sale or tenancy change. Any transfer attempted under this POA is invalid. He looked at my father. Did you represent to the Bennetts or their agent that you had full authority to sell this property? He asked. Dad's gaze flicked to the Bennetts, to the deputy, to me. I represented that I was handling things, he said. My daughter signed that. She trusted me. She trusted you to pay the power bill, not sell her roof, Harris said. Emily's lawyer stepped forward. We've already filed notice with the title company, he said. The sale is frozen. We will be pursuing remedies against the agent who facilitated this, and we reserve all rights against any party who misrepresented authority. My father's face mottled. You can't do this, he said to me, voice rising. You can't just waltz back from your little war and throw your own family onto the street. The phrase, your little war, slid under my skin like shrapnel. I took a breath and felt my boots solid on the cold ground, the way I'd been taught when incoming sounded too close. Root yourself, then act. You put yourself here, I said. You made choices while I was gone. You used my absence and a signature meant for emergencies as cover for a grab. I'm not throwing you anywhere. I'm just not cushioning your landing this time. Chad's bravado cracked. We'll be homeless, he blurted. Maria, come on, the girls, what's should have mattered to you when you signed a fraudulent contract. Emily's husband said quietly, the first words I'd heard from him. His voice shook, but not with fear, with anger. We packed our lives on your word. Turns out you're not just screwing over your daughter. The condo door behind them opened a crack. One of Chad's kids peeked out, hair messy, a stuffed giraffe hanging from her hand. Daddy? She asked. He flinched, turned, snapped. Go inside. She disappeared, the door clicking shut. The silence that followed felt heavy, like the thick quiet after an explosion, dust still hanging in the air. Deputy Harris broke it. Here's what's going to happen, he said, until this is sorted. No one goes in or out without Miss Lawson's consent. Mr. Lawson, your pseudo sale is void. Any further attempt to interfere with title, keys, or access will be treated as criminal. My father stepped toward him. You can't just side with her because she wears a uniform, he said. I'm siding with the law, Harris replied. Her service record is just how I know she understands what that means. Dad turned on me. You really brought cops into this? He snarled. Over a condo? I thought of Kabul, of convoy manifests, of names on lists and names read out at memorials. It's not about the condo, I said. It's about you deciding my work, my sacrifice, my life are an emergency fund for Chad. They're not. He opened his mouth, closed it. For the first time in a long time, he seemed to actually see me. Not as background muscle, not as the silent fixer, but as someone with authority that didn't come from him. Chad's shoulders sagged. Where are we supposed to go? He asked, small now. I felt a flicker of the old instinct to step in, to solve, to offer my couch, my bank account, my sleep, my peace. I shut it down. That's between you and Dad, I said. You had months to plan. I had a war. Emily's lawyer checked his watch. I think we're done here, he said. Deputy, you have what you need? I do, Harris said. He looked at my father one last time. Mr. Lawson, I strongly suggest you talk to your own attorney. This doesn't have to get uglier, but if you keep pushing, it will. The Bennetts walked back to their car, shoulders hunched against the wind, their dream of a new home dissolving into legal sludge. I felt a sharp pang watching the disappointment in their daughter's face through the window. Collateral damage. I tucked that feeling away. Something to remember when I decided how far I wanted to push this later. My father stood in the yard, fist jammed into his pockets, face hard. You happy? He asked. You won. You always do. I met his gaze. This isn't about winning, I said. It's about not losing everything I bled for because you can't stop rescuing Chad with other people's lives. He sneered. You think that uniform makes you better than us? He said. No, I said. But it's the reason I knew to start pulling records the second your emails looked off. His jaw twitched. You were watching me, he said, like it was a betrayal. You were selling my house, I said. We all make choices. I lifted my folder slightly. You made yours, I added. These are mine. Then I turned to Deputy Harris. I'll be in touch once my attorney coordinates next steps, I said. He nodded. You call me if there's any trouble, he said. Any at all. I left them standing in the winter burnt grass, my father, my brother, the dent of my sea bag still pressed into the sidewalk where I'd dropped it the night before. As I walked away, my phone buzzed twice in quick succession. I didn't look until I reached the corner. 2 texts, both from Dad. Dad, you really called the cops on your own family. Dad, you think this makes you strong. It makes you cruel. The old script. The old guilt. I took a slow breath, thumb hovering. Then I copied the messages into my harassment log, added the date and time, and closed the thread without replying. Strong and cruel weren't the same thing. I'd built a career on knowing the difference between necessary force and needless harm. Today, for the first time with them, I'd chosen the same standard. The porch had been their battlefield, the paper was mine. And the next phase wouldn't be about shouting on lawns, it would be about title reports, voided contracts, and one clear, quiet fact. They hadn't been ready for a fight I'd started long before I stepped out of that taxi. I thought the lawn confrontation would be the hard part. Turned out, the hard part was the waiting. Days blurred into clerk stamps and email chains. Feldman forwarding me responses from the county recorder, the title company, the VA loan office. The legal side of the world doesn't shout. It just quietly closes doors. Subject: Notice of disputed authority. Loss in property subject. Proposed transfer suspended, pending documentation. Every time my phone buzzed with one of those, my shoulders loosened a fraction. The sale died in pieces. The county recorder flagged the file. No transfer without wet signature of title holder. And the title company froze escrow and sent a delicately furious email about misrepresentations of authority. The HOA, bless their rulebook hearts, quietly mailed my father a letter reminding him that unauthorized occupancy changes could result in fines. Chad moved back into whatever temporary chaos he'd crawled out of. The shades in my living room stayed closed. My mailbox filled with realtor flyers and legal junk. My text log filled with messages from my father. Dad, this is getting out of hand. Dad, you're making your brother suffer to prove a point. Dad, your mother would be ashamed. I archived everyone into the folder labeled Evidence, Communications, and replied to none. Silence was not the absence of power. It was discipline. One afternoon, Feldman called while I was on the treadmill at the base gym, trying to outrun adrenaline. Good news, he said. The Bennett's attorney confirmed they're going after the agent for misrepresentation only, not you. And the VA loan office has formally verified you as the sole borrower. Title's clean. We're past the dangerous part. I slowed the belt, sweat cooling too fast on my skin. So what now? I asked, stepping off. Now, he said. We wait for the paperwork to catch up. But you can sleep knowing they can't sell it out from under you. Occupancy is still muddy, but we'll fix that too. He hesitated. And Maria? The sheriff's lieutenant mentioned something. My stomach dipped. What? I asked. Your father came in yesterday, he said. Tried to explain. Donahue took a statement, logged it. Didn't contradict you on the record. Just looked deflated, he said. I pictured my father in that office, hat in hand, spin not working on a man who deals in DUIs and domestic calls every day. Okay, I said. If he reaches out to you wanting to talk, Feldman added, that's your call. Legally, you're in a strong position. Emotionally, that's different terrain. Yeah, I said softly. Different battle space. It was almost 3 weeks before my father asked for anything besides control. The text came late when the city was quiet and my cheap motel heater hummed like an old generator. Dad, can we talk? No lawyers, just us. I stared at the screen. My thumb hovered. I thought of every time just us had meant you absorb the damage. Every time I'd stepped in between Chad and consequences, between Dad and a bounce check, between our family and the truth. I also thought of Donahue and the way he'd said, if they contact you, save every message. Don't engage in anything heated. I typed, me, public place, tomorrow, 1400, Riverfront Park, main bench. Then put the phone face down and listened to my pulse until it slowed. The Riverfront Park was cold and bright the next afternoon. Thin ice clung to the bank, glittering in the weak sun. Geese left tracks in mud where snow had melted and refrozen. Kids in too thin jackets chased each other around playground equipment while their parents sipped coffee from paper cups. I chose the main bench facing the water, folder beside me like a second spine. My father was already there. He looked smaller. Not physically, still broad, still that thick chest and contractor's shoulders, but something around his eyes had deflated. The lines bracketing his mouth had deepened since I'd left for Kabul. He stood up when he saw me, then seemed to think better of it and sat again. Maria, he said. Dad, I replied, sitting with a sliver of distance between us. For a minute, we just watched the river. A dog barked somewhere behind us. A gust of wind slid under my collar, smelling faintly of exhaust and cold earth. He cleared his throat. You made me look like a criminal, he said, voice low. I kept my eyes on the water. You made yourself look like one, and I said, I just refused to cover it up. He flinched. I was trying to keep this family together, he muttered. Chad's got kids. He's drowning. Your mother... Mom's dead, I said softly. She hasn't made a single decision in years. This was you. He sucked in a breath like I'd slapped him. You always did that, he said, cut straight to the ugliest possible version. You used a power of attorney I gave you in good faith to try to sell my home without my consent, I said. There isn't a pretty version. He scrubbed a hand over his face, fingers rasping against stubble. For a moment, the mask slipped. Fear was there and something else. Shame's older cousin. When your mother died, he said slowly, I thought I lost my job. Your job? I repeated. Being needed, he said. I didn't know what to do with grief, so I started fixing things. Bills, leaky sinks, Chad's messes. It made me feel useful, like I mattered. He gave a bitter laugh. And you, he added, you just went out and built a life without asking me for a dime. Signed up, left, sent postcards, called sometimes. Came home with muscles and medals. He shook his head. I told myself you didn't need me, he said. That you'd chosen a life where I was extra. So, stopped being your father and doubled down on being Chad's. He looked at his hands. When he said he was losing the apartment, he said, when the credit cards maxed and the landlord was knocking, I panicked. I saw those kids' faces. I saw myself as the man who could save them. And I looked at your empty condo and thought, she'll understand. She's strong. She's barely here. She doesn't need that place like they do. So you took it, I said. So I took it, he echoed, voice rough. Told myself it was temporary. That once they got on their feet, we'd figure it out. Maybe you'd be mad, but you'd forgive me. You always do. He finally turned to look at me. I stopped seeing you as someone who could be hurt, he said quietly. I saw you as armor, a resource, a problem solver, not a person I could wound. The words sank in colder than the wind. I thought of every deployment call where he'd launched straight into Chad's problems without asking how I was. Every family gathering where my promotion had become a 5-minute segue to my brother's latest crisis. I thought of standing on my own porch, dust on my boots, being told I was homeless like it was a punchline. I am hurt, I said. I was hurt when you took my keys and electricity and couch and told a stranger my life didn't matter. I was hurt when strong started meaning we can steal from you and you'll survive it. He opened his mouth, closed it. A single car passed behind us, tires hissing on damp pavement. I know, he said finally. You were right to call the lawyer, to talk to the sheriff. I walked into that station thinking I could explain. I left realizing that if my name had been anything but Dad, they'd already be pressing charges. He swallowed hard. I messed up, he said. Bad. I don't have a defense. The admission sat between us like a third person. For 35 years, I'd been waiting to hear I was wrong from his mouth. It sounded nothing like I'd imagined. No grand confession, no cinematic string swell. Just a tired man on a cold bench saying it because there was nowhere left to run. What do you want from me? I asked. It wasn't rhetorical. He stared at the water. I'd like my daughter back, he said. But I don't deserve that. Not now, maybe not ever. He tore his gaze away from the river and met my eyes. What I'm asking, he said, is don't burn it all down. You've got the legal high ground. You could press charges, sue us into dust. I'm not asking you to fix this. I'm asking you to leave a path so I can prove over time that I'm not just this. He gestured vaguely, like he could encompass his own worst decisions with one motion. Anger flared hot in my chest, then cooled as quickly. Feldman had been right. This part was different terrain. I thought of the Bennetts' little "May your walls know joy again" sign sitting in Rosen and Feldman's office waiting for me. Of Emily's tired eyes. Of Deputy Harris's simple, steady question, what do you want from us right now? I thought of Kabul, of the difference between a necessary strike and needless damage. I'm not pressing charges, I said. His shoulders dropped in visible relief. But I'm not dropping documentation either. The paper stands. He nodded, swallowing. Fair, he said. You will move out of my condo, I continued. Completely. Anything of mine you damaged, you repair or replace. Any rent you collected from Chad, you refund to him. It's your problem, not mine. And you find a way to help him without using my name on any line ever again. He nodded, eyes wet now. I'll do it, he said. And if you ever touch my credit, my title, my VA benefits, or my name on a legal document without my consent again, I said, my voice dropping, I will file every charge the state can support. I won't hesitate next time. He didn't flinch. I believe you, he said. We sat there a long moment. Somewhere down the river, a siren wailed faintly, rising and falling. Can we ever get back to good? He asked finally, voice small in a way I'd never heard. I thought about that little bench version of me at 8, waiting on the porch for him to come home from a job site, hoping he wouldn't be in a bad mood. She deserved an answer as much as he did. I don't know, I said honestly. We're not there, we're not close, but I'm willing to start it at neutral. Neutral, he repeated, tasting the word like it was a foreign language. No more using me, I said. No more assuming I'll fix it. We talk like adults. We respect each other's lines. That's neutral. He nodded slowly. I can try for that, he said. If you'll let me help when you ask. The idea of asking him for anything felt alien. But maybe the point wasn't to flip a switch. Maybe it was to stop being the one always running to the fire when the people inside were the ones striking matches. I'll think about it, I said. He exhaled. Thank you, he murmured. We sat there, not quite father and daughter, not quite strangers. Just two people on a park bench with a river in front of them and a pile of wreckage behind. Eventually he stood. I'll be out by the end of the month, he said. Keys on the kitchen counter. No surprises. Good, I said. He hesitated. Maria? Yeah? I am proud of you, he said, the words awkward and heavy. Not just the uniform, the way you handled this. I wouldn't have, that's part of the problem. He didn't wait for an answer. He just tucked his hands in his pockets and walked away down the path, shoulders hunched against a wind that suddenly felt less cold. I watched until he turned the corner and disappeared. Then I looked down at the folder in my lap. Paper, receipts, proof. The legal battle was mostly won. The emotional one was ongoing. But for the first time in a long time, I felt something like forward motion that wasn't just survival. I'd gone into this wanting my condo back. Somewhere along the way, I'd also taken back the right to decide where and with whom I lived my life. And the next time I turned my key in that lock, I intended to walk into more than four walls and a deed. I wanted to walk into a home that actually belonged to me, inside and out. 3 months later, my key turned in the lock like it had never belonged to anyone else. The deadbolt slid back with a smooth, soft thunk. No resistance, no cheap replacement hardware, no mystery copies floating around town. Feldman had handed me the new set in his office that morning, each key tagged with my name and the date the last cloud on the title had cleared. "Congratulations, Ms. Lawson," he'd said. "The condo is yours again. Clean." Now the door opened onto silence. Not the oppressive silence of being pushed out, but the kind that waits for whatever you decide to put in it. The air inside smelled faintly of dust and stale takeout, with a thread of something chemical lingering from the cleaning crew the HOA had insisted on after my father moved out. Their last box of things sat labeled in black marker by the wall. "Lawson, pickup scheduled." I wedged my sea bag in the doorway, stepped inside, and just stood there. My couch, mine again, sat where it had, the cushions a little more sagged than I remembered. The coffee table bore a constellation of faint cup rings I hadn't made. One corner of the wall had a scuff at kidney height. I ran my fingers over it, the paint slightly rough under my hand. "Collateral damage," I murmured. "Fixable." On the kitchen counter waited a small wicker basket I didn't recognize, wrapped in cellophane that crinkled softly when I touched it. Next to it, a wooden plaque rested against the backsplash. "May your walls know joy again," it said in looping script. A note was tucked underneath in careful handwriting. "Maria, we're so sorry for what you went through. Thank you for fighting fair and not taking it out on us. We hope this place holds better things for you now. Emily and Mark Bennett." I let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. They hadn't owed me anything. They'd been used too. But that little sign felt like a benediction over the whole stupid battle. I set it up on a nail by the entryway, just above where I'd dropped my sea bag the day my father told me I was homeless. The words looked almost absurd against the bare wall. Then slowly, they started to feel right. God, the next days blurred into small, practical acts of reclamation. I opened every window, cold air knifing through the rooms, chasing out stale smells and old arguments. The hum of the furnace kicked on, warm air spilling from vents, proof that the utilities were back in my name. I patched nail holes and painted over scuffs, brushstrokes smoothing out marks left by someone else's life. Each swipe of paint felt like erasing a line of somebody else's assumption. I unpacked boxes that had sat in storage while I bounced between bases and deployments. A framed photo of my boot camp platoon, my promotion certificate to staff sergeant, a goofy snapshot of me and Harper on the Kabul COP, dust cloud behind us like a ghost. Those went on the wall where my family pictures had once hung crooked under other people's hands. My medals stayed in their case, but I set the box on a shelf by the window instead of burying it in a drawer. Not as trophies, just as a quiet statement. This is part of who lives here. One evening, as the sunset smeared dull orange over the building across from mine, my phone buzzed. A message from Chad. "Chad, we're in a small rental by the highway now." Chad, "Kids miss you. I know I screwed up." Chad, "For what it's worth, I'm glad you kept the place. You earned it. I read it twice." The old reflex twitched again. Offer help, work the angles, suggest a budget plan, a side job, something. Instead, I typed, "Me. I hope you find your footing. Me, I'm not your fix anymore." Then I put the phone face down and went back to putting books on the shelf in alphabetical order, the way I liked them. An hour later, another text came in from my father. Just one line this time. "Dad, keys are on the counter. Thank you for not pressing charges. No blame, no manipulation, just acknowledgement." I didn't answer that one at all. Some days, the kindest thing you can do for a person is stop giving them chances to hurt you. The first night I actually slept there again, the place felt different. The hum of the fridge and the low rush of traffic outside the window sounded like normal life, not like intrusion. The cheap motel smell of stale carpet and desperation was finally gone, replaced by fresh paint and the faint, clean tang of glass cleaner. I lay in my own bed, an upgrade from the old air mattress, listening to the heater cycle on and off, and thought of Kabul, of pulling clips from dusty printers, highlighting lines in convoys logs, reading between the lines of local contacts, and knowing which decisions would protect people and which would put them at risk. I realized that I'd done the same thing here. Not with bullets and blast patterns, but with emails and filings and the simple decision not to answer the phone when old patterns came calling. The law had been my cover fire. The paper trail, my comms. The part that had required the most courage wasn't walking up to the condo that first night or facing my father on the lawn with a deputy watching. It had been not rushing in to rescue them after, letting the consequences land where they belonged, holding my ground long enough for the system to do what it was built to do. Suits. Months later, I came home from drill weekend to find a familiar car idling at the curb. My father sat behind the wheel, hands at 10 and 2, staring straight ahead. For a moment, the sight of that car in front of my building made my chest go tight again. Then I remembered the park bench, his hunched shoulders, the words, "I stopped being a father to you," and the map of what I had already decided. I walked up to his window and knocked lightly. He rolled it down. "Hey," he said. "Hey," I replied. He glanced at the door to my building. "You look settled," he said. "Place suits you." I shrugged. "It's mine," I said. "That helps." He nodded. He cleared his throat. "Just came by to drop something." He reached to the seat beside him and handed me a small, scuffed keyring. On it hung the spare condo key he'd been so eager to have. Beside it, an old bronze Marine Corps keychain he'd carried since high school, back when he'd thought about enlisting and never had. "I don't need these," he said, "and I figured you might want that one." I weighed the rings in my hand, metal bit into my palm, solid and real. "Thanks," I said. He nodded again. "I'm going to a financial counselor," he blurted. "At the county. They've got a program. I figured if I'm going to be mad about money all the time, I should at least understand it." A smile tugged at the corner of my mouth despite myself. "That's good," I said. "For you. For Chad." We stood there in a small, awkward silence. "I'm not asking for a relationship," he said quickly. Not yet. I know that's your call. I just wanted you to know I heard you, at the park, on the lawn, in the lawyer's office, all of it." He swallowed. "I know you're not armor," he added. "Not my emergency fund. You're my kid. I forgot that. I don't expect you to forget what I did." The honesty in his voice was clumsy and raw and unfamiliar. It didn't erase anything. It didn't fix the past. But it did something small and important. It moved. And movement, I'd learned, was the only way anything ever changed. "I'll think about Sunday dinner sometime," I said. His eyes flicked up, surprised. "Okay," he said. "No rush. Neutral, right?" I nodded. "Neutral," I agreed. He rolled the window up and drove away, leaving me on the sidewalk with keys biting my palm and the cold air stinging my nose. I went upstairs, unlocked my door, and stepped into my space. The "May Your Walls Know Joy Again" sign greeted me by the entry. I ran my thumb over the carved letters, then hung my father's old keychain on the hook beside my own keys. Not as an invitation, as a reminder of what I'd survived and of what I'd chosen. I walked to the window, looked out over the parking lot, and saw my reflection faint in the glass. Hair pulled back, uniform folded over the back of a chair, deployment duffel still open in the corner. My condo was quiet. My phone, for once, was silent. My life, for the first time in a long time, felt like it belonged to me, not to my father's need to be needed, not to Chad's emergencies, not even to the story they'd tried to tell about who I was. They had treated my hard work like a safety net for everyone but me. I'd protected what I built without becoming like them. I'd walked up to the door, dusty from Kabul, not to beg for scraps, but to claim the home and the dignity I'd already earned. Forgiveness, I realized, wasn't the same as handing back the keys. I could let the anger cool without forfeiting what was mine. I could build a space where my walls knew joy again, whether they ever knocked on the door or not. And if I ever did invite them in, it would be on terms I chose, in a home that stayed mine when they left.